Hello and welcome to the big picture. The role of the intelligence agencies come into limelight in spasmodic succession whenever an incident involving them hits the media. The latest instance is when former RAW chief A.S. Dulat's book hit the headlines last week. Dulat's interesting, controversial and sensational disclosures continues to occupy the media space as well as raising several questions. Today we will not look at the contents of the book, which has found both backers as well as critics, which I am sure one of my guests today will tackle on his own. On the other hand, two important questions have emerged out of it. One is the question about top intelligence officers writing books on their experiences with or without having been vetted. And secondly, the larger issue of intelligence reforms and the need for creating a legal architecture for the intelligence agencies, and also very importantly, making them accountable in the form of a legislative oversight mechanism. Periodically, the issue of oversight as well as scrutiny of the parliament over the intelligence agencies have been discussed in this country, and even a private member's bill had been introduced in the parliament. But none of it has materialized, and the intelligence agencies continue to function without either legal backing or an oversight mechanism. We will look at all these aspects today with an eminent panel of guests. I have with me Manish Tiwari, former union minister, who had drafted an impressive private member's bill and tabled it in the Lok Sabha in 2011. Arun, Bhagat, former director, Intelligence Bureau. H.K. Dua, MP and a senior journalist. Vivek, Katju, former ambassador, and also A.S. Dulat, former RAW chief himself at his residence on the OB. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Dulat, we are not, as I said in my introduction itself, we are not going to discuss the contents of your book. It has made enough headlines. But we are looking at the larger issue of intelligence officials like you having held very top positions, writing books. There have been many people since last week who have been saying that whether this book should have been allowed to be published at all. What is your impression on this?
Today must be my lucky day, even though you say that I shouldn't talk about the book. But I heard you talking about it in the studio, and somebody said it's not a bad book. And I'm also fortunate
you overheard.
On the panel you have...
Sir, you overheard and you're being a real intelligence man.
No, I'm telling you honestly what I overheard.
Yeah.
That's what the book contains also. A lot of things which I heard and overheard.
That was supposed to be off the record.
And
anyway.
most of it, and I've made this clear in the book, that most of it I have learnt in the last 10 years since I left government.
Okay.
So there are no secrets in this. People talk about divulging operational details and this, that, and the other. It's a lot of bunkum, I spent 30 years in the IB and 2 in the R&AW, and I'm very conscious of the Official Secrets Act. I don't think anywhere I've divulged any state secrets. Whatever I've talked about is very much in the public domain. There are people who shy away from it. But because I carried it in my head for so many years that I've just written it down. And I was approached as soon as I left government in 2004, 2005, by some publishers, and they said, we want you to write your story. And I said, no, it's not, I thought it would not be proper because I was involved in a lot of it, and a lot of it was still ongoing. So that was the time when, yes, there were things which were ongoing. Today, there is nothing which is ongoing. And, after all, 11 years have passed since I left government.
You say that nothing is ongoing,
when people
but
say that, whether this...
Yeah, please continue, sir.
Yes.
Please
this is my point, that there are no state secrets in this book.
There are no secrets. You say there are no state...
There are some interest...
You say there are no...
No.
Sir, you say there are no...
I think there are no secrets in this book. All of it is known to somebody or the other. I've only put it together.
Okay.
And based on what I've heard from Kashmiri friends mostly.
Okay. Manish Tiwari?
In fact, it's very interesting on the panel. You've got everyone who's on the panel has been a friend. I have my former DIB there on your panel.
Yes.
And he would know the significance, for instance, of the 96 elections. You have Mr. Dua there, who was a colleague in the PMO. He would, I think, vouchsafe for what I have mentioned of the atmosphere in the PMO.
Okay.
So I don't think these are great secrets.
Okay, sir. Please stay on. I'll come back to you. Mr. Bhagat. Mr. Bhagat, you were his director. No, apart from, leave alone the personal aspect of it, but I'm asking you the question which I asked him also. You think that intelligence officers should, can write books like this and, there should be no problem with that? Though as far as the reading public is concerned, I'm sure the reading public enjoys reading such books.
Well, it has to be accepted that memoirs have become a literary genre. This is and it's a growing one. You find it in all professions. It is coming. I mean, even recently we have had some books written by people who have been in very high positions, and particularly as far as books and memoirs, particularly by spy masters and operatives is concerned, this is something which is looked forward by the public.
Absolutely.
It's another matter that John Le Carre as well as Ian Fleming were very distinguished intelligence officers. And then again, apart from writing fiction, there are lots of people who have given their memoirs. And I think there is a necessity, it is necessary also, because then we, as you in your introduction quite rightly said, that we have to find out what the limits are, what the limits of intelligence are.
Who decides?
There is a moral dilemma.
Sir, who decides what are the limits?
That is exactly it. I mean, who will decide? Ultimately, it has to be a small group which is carrying out a particular operation, let us say. I mean, if the man in the field has an opportunity to even consult his seniors.
Sir, I'm not talking of the operational, I'm talking of, books. When a book like this is written, because some people have suggested that something like this needs to be vetted, there needs to be some kind of a mechanism at the government level where these kind of books have to be vetted before they are allowed to be published. Would you agree with that?
No, I would not. You see, because if a person reaches such high positions, I'm sure you have to rely on his discretion and his personal sense of conscience or morality or whatever you have. I mean, these are people who cannot be trifled with.
Okay.
They have gone through the paces. They have taken
So you have to trust them. That's what you're saying.
The trials.
You have to trust them.
You have to. And in any case, any type of pre-censorship, I would say, would not be justified, particularly not in our country.
Okay. Mr. Manish Tiwari, how would you look at it?
Well,
on this aspect, I'll come to the other important aspect later.
Well, first of all, I would like to compliment Mr. Dulat. He's written a very, very good book. What I was saying privately in the studio, which unfortunately he was privy to, I would not use the word eavesdropping, but he's written a very good book, and he deserves to be complimented. And I entirely agree with what Mr. Bhagat is saying, that all this talk about pre-censorship, you insult the intelligence of those people who've headed your intelligence agencies or have held sensitive positions.
And you have given them some important positions.
No, by even suggesting that there should be a pre-vetting. You need to rely on people this nation has relied on for all these years. And I don't think Mr. Dulat needs to be at all defensive or he requires to offer any explanations for writing this book. Unfortunately, people in this country are not writing enough, so therefore you do not really get an insight or you do not get a blow-by-blow account as to what transpires in the highest echelons of the Indian state on important issues which the people have a right to know.
Okay. Mr. Katju?
I think...
I'm told that you also figure in this book.
Well, I won't go into the contents of the book.
We are not going into the contents, but...
Because Mr. Dulat has based those on what he has heard. And if one has been involved in certain activities of government, then it's not proper for me to speak.
No, I'm not asking you to speak. This whole issue of
now, as far as
publishing this book.
Far as writing books relating to official acts which one has done, is concerned, I've always personally been in a dilemma. On the one hand, it is perfectly proper and correct to reveal such matters in such details as one can, because some of these matters should be in the public domain. On the other hand, a fine line has to be drawn of what needs to be withheld and what is conveyed. Now, whenever that line is sought to be created, then one cannot present a full picture, because certain things have to be withheld. And therefore, I for one feel that countries that have a tradition, that where even if the senior most person in a government department is writing about his official acts after retirement, then he gets it cleared.
Who should clear it?
No, it is cleared by the department itself, because after all, colleagues in the departments have the right to see whether anything which is contained in the book has a relevance to what is going on. A person who is retired need not know if that is relevant. He perhaps will not know if that is relevant to certain continuing activities.
Mr. Dulat's contention is that none of what he has written
That's perfectly
has any
all right.
continuing...
I respect his contention. But I, for one, feel that those countries that are more conservative in this regard are perhaps have learnt by experience of hundreds of years. And therefore, we as a country need to, and as a system, need to give that some thought.
Which democratic countries have
The
this
Americans, for example, I think have this requirement that if someone is writing about acts that he has been involved in, or a period where he has been part of government and he is writing about that period, then he submits the manuscript. They are very particular. Then that manuscript is submitted and cleared.
Mr. Dulat, would you like to react to that?
No, I don't want to react to that, except for the fact that, all I know is that Leon Panetta wrote a memoir recently. Before that, George Tenet wrote a memoir. And I know that Stella Remington wrote her memoir, which created quite a furor in England. So how much this was vetted? In any case, my book is open for vetting. I mean, if I've said something or if I've crossed some line, as Ambassador Katju is suggesting, then, I can be pulled up. I mean, I'm still around. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, sir. Mr. Dua, I think now you have to give your judgment on this, having being a journalist.
In fact, Mr. Dulat has served the country by writing this book. If he had not written, many things would not have been known. And I don't think he has compromised any official secrets which he should not have disclosed. In fact, I would have liked him to come out with those also. I have been a journalist most of my life. I would have loved this information much earlier also, and I would have loved to publish it. that can be my grievance.
No, but as far as the question of vetting is concerned.
It's an obnoxious idea, frankly speaking, vetting a book of that seniority. What for? Censorship. You are going to let another secretary vet the book of Mr. Dulat's book, what should go and what should not go. Now, some policeman will vet the books written by you, me, Manish, or Mr. Arun Bhagat. In fact, Arun Bhagat should also write a book, which I would love to publish.
I don't want to sound a discordant note.
No, you can't sound like discordant.
No, but I don't think that it will be vetted at a lower level. You see, and the greatest latitude would be given. In most likelihood, all these things are in the public domain and people will say, fine, go right ahead. But there is, in my view, I'm a little more conservative here. In my view, yes, a certain amount of...
Yes, one second, sir.
This whole talk of the Official Secrets Act, frankly, for the lack of a better word, is complete bunkum. The act needs to be repealed. It's an archaic legislation, and all that it has been used for is persecute journalists in the last 10 years. I do not know whether it has actually been able to contain any secret. And let me tell you, what is most secretive are cabinet notes. Even before cabinet notes used to reach ministers, journalists used to come and tell me that this is contained in the cabinet note. So what official secrets are we talking about here?
I remember.
Sir,
vetting is totally obnoxious idea.
Okay, we need to go to the other important issue. Mr. Arun Bhagat, The other more important issue, which has been discussed in this country for quite some time, is about the scrutiny, the parliament scrutiny, legislative backing for intelligence agencies. In the context of Mr. Dulat's book, we are using this occasion to discuss that. So you think that time has come now to come out with the legislative backing first to the intelligence agencies as well as the CBI, and also have some kind of a scrutiny by a parliament. Manish, I'll come to Manish Tiwari about that. Manish Tiwari's bill is a very extensive bill, if you have seen it. Mr. Bhagat?
Well, I think it is necessary. The time has come. Our democracy is mature enough. And if all aspects of government working are scrutinized by Parliament and also are approved by Parliament, all actions virtually, indirectly, I do not see any reason why an act should not be there to guide and give the legal powers for the work that they do, whatever it may be, to intelligence officers. I think it's high time.
But you don't think it will come in the way of the functioning of the agencies?
Well, it should not. It should not if the act is a proper act and it gives them sufficient leeway and also makes the supervision in such a manner that they do not seek indictment every time a mistake has been committed. Because in this field, I can assure you there are lots of hits and misses. And if every hit or miss is taken to be deliberate and a fault, then I'm afraid the whole organizations will be dissembled very quickly.
Manish? Manish, let me tell us, because 2010, you came out with this bill. It was scheduled to be, it was never discussed. It was just laid on the table. And why did it, all those 4 years that your government was there, wasn't there any seriousness about this whole issue? What was the problem?
Well, let me tell you as to how it all commenced. It commenced from a series of questions that I asked in Parliament about the legal basis of the CBI, the Intelligence Bureau, the R&AW, the NTRO, the Bureau of Immigration for that matter. And to my surprise, I found that there was no legal architecture which really provided a basis for any of these organizations.
To exist, actually.
To exist, actually. And that is why the Guwahati High Court actually struck down the CBI as illegal. I mean, the CBI is today operating under an interim stay of the Supreme Court of India while the matter is going to be heard. So therefore, we decided that let us try and do a private member's bill and see as to whether the idea would float. So we did the private member's bill, put it on the table of the House. Unfortunately, I went to government and the bill lapsed. But the moot question that you're asking is, why didn't the government do anything? The answer is very simple. Nobody in government wanted to do anything. There was institutional resistance. And I don't even think that there was the political will to do it. It was too esoteric because, politics is more about doing legislation which can either get you votes or has a social welfare content to it. So it wasn't priority. But towards the end of my term in Parliament before I went to government, in fact, two very senior people who were charged with the remit of national security, they told me that the institutional resistance has come down. But ultimately, nothing came out of it.
In fact, I was reading a report in 2011, soon after you tabled this bill, by the then Home Secretary, who was assuring you in a public meeting that this is going to come up, and there's a lot of seriousness about it.
Well, I guess they were trying to just mollycoddle a member of Parliament and nothing more than that.
Wasn't there a
Democrats are good at doing that.
Okay.
Manish, wasn't there an LP Singh committee report on the accountability of these agencies?
Yes.
If I remember,
IDSA
I'm going for the newspaper memory.
That's right.
Mr. Dulat, now how do you look at this whole issue of accountability of the intelligence agencies? You think how much accountability can be there at all, first of all? And when Manish talks of institutional resistance, is the resistance also coming from the intelligence agencies?
Yeah. There is. Let's be honest about it. The resistance is mainly from the agencies, but it would be wrong to say that we don't have oversight. There is oversight. what Mr. Manish Tiwari is talking about is parliamentary oversight, and that's, I think, what the bill was all about. And I'm fully with him on that, but I'm not surprised that it is taking time, because although I think we are a great democracy, the most open democracy, but still we are not the US of A, and it will be a slow process, because as you said, there is, let's be honest, there is institutional resistance, even if it's opening up a bit.
Why is there that resistance? What is the concern? Are those concerns justified concerns, or just, nobody wants to be, scrutinized intensely because so much money is involved, so much, a whole lot of things are involved?
No, I don't think it's a question of money, sir, but it's I think it's the question of overall coming under political scrutiny, As I said, there is scrutiny, there is official scrutiny. Nothing happens in any agency without government being in the loop. Like Mr. Bhagat rightly pointed out, that every time I shook hands with a separatist, I couldn't keep seniors informed. But other than that, the outline is very clear to people at the top, what we are doing.
Okay.
It's not a private enterprise, it never has been.
Sometimes the concern is that it becomes private enterprise once in a while, and nobody seems to know about it.
No, I think there can't be.
We have had books written by our former colleagues, who have made it, which were equally sensational, but television unfortunately was not in such a major space at that time. But there have been your colleagues in the business who have made such disclosures. Yes, Mr. Katju?
No, they can't. There are checks and balances, as in, I think, in the agencies, as there are in all institutions. But checks and balances can't be within the executive branch itself. It can't be within the agency,
right,
or within the executive branch. Now,
and
the question then is...
They won't be effective in any case.
No, the question is, yes, I think legislative scrutiny is required. The question is, what will be its nature? That is it, because we cannot afford the intelligence agencies to be crippled. We live in a very dangerous world, and we require to do things in this dangerous world which are quite unsavory in pursuit of national interest. And unfortunately, it's the lot of the agencies to do those things. So the nature of scrutiny has to be such that operational matters will be allowed, perhaps in a manner of scrutiny within the executive branch. And this is where I think a great deal of deliberation and maturity will be required. But there's one point which has emerged from this book which I found quite fascinating, and since there are two very distinguished people from the IB, Mr. Dulat notes that he met Gyani Zail Singh in Chandigarh, and he gave him information about dissidents, political dissidents coming from within the Congress party, in fact, from an MP of the Congress. Now, is that part of the IB's brief? Because it seems to me,
exactly why you require a law.
Seems to me that Mr. Dulat at that stage, and he was not heading Chandigarh, he notes, I think it's on page 5 of his book, that he notes that he met Gyani ji there for the first time, and he told Gyani ji this. Now, that is what surprised me, that this is as if it is a natural part of the IB.
You have to explain.
It is a natural part of the IB's work.
Yes, Mr. Dulat.
Let me try and explain that.
Yes.
Let me try and explain that. So the Intelligence Bureau doesn't spend its time covering dissidents of political parties. But since I was meeting the Chief Minister for the first time, I figured what his anxiety was. I was ready for what he was going to ask me, and so I told him. It was not the only thing that we talked about. We talked about a lot of things.
Nobody, obviously.
We talked about the political situation in the Punjab, the unrest that might be created by the Akalis and so on. There was a lot of this thing. I've just mentioned that because that's what Gyani ji didn't like.
Didn't like what, sir?
He didn't give me chicken curry only to tell him that Mohinder Singh Gill was, undermining his authority.
But may I come in?
But that is what is, but that's what is worrying.
May I come in?
No, in fact, Manish, in your bill I was going through, there's a very specific clause there saying that IB does not take any action that furthers the interest of any political party or coalition of
individual.
political parties or other such groups, etc. This once it goes into an act, it becomes a.
You see, the difficulty is that, in fact, Mr. Dulat, we must again thank him for being so candid. The consumer, that is the government or the political masters, demand that kind of intelligence.
Exactly.
And therefore, the intelligence agencies, unfortunately, are much against their will at times, maybe even compelled to supply it. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
During my 2004 and 2009 parliament elections, I was regularly briefed by the IB officer on the ground, almost on a regular basis, where, I was winning and where I was losing. And in fact, he was not only briefing me, he was briefing all other candidates, I believe. So one day I asked him, I said that in a sensitive state like Punjab, a frontline state, shouldn't your remit really be to look at militancy or terrorism coming up? He says, we look at that also, but we look at this also. So therefore, that's a reality.
Mr. Bhagat, how do you react to that? And this is again an open secret. I don't think anybody needs to write a book on this. We all, as journalists, we all know about it.
Many of the IB reports from the field may be based on the morning newspapers.
My question is, there is a charter in every organization about remit. Is that part of the charter?
Mr. Bhagat?
I beg your pardon. What did you say, Vivek?
I asked, sir, whether it is part of the charter of the IB that this information will be provided of a political nature on what are dissidents and others doing will be provided to the political leadership. Because if it's not part of the charter, how is it being done?
The charter has been spelt out somewhat, but earlier it used to be whatever may be of interest to the government in connection with security, law and order. Now that's a very large canvas. It's a very large canvas. And then you must realize that certain personal equations have to be built up.
And
by the operatives.
I think there is
with the political executive, this
the
is
political
astounding.
executive.
You see, that is what happens. How will you get information unless you come to know a person?
Mr. Bhagat, I think we understand what you are saying. Here is a politician, and politicians love gossip. And people who provide that kind of gossip, inevitably. Mr. Dulat, would you agree with that?
Well, I think everybody loves a little bit of gossip. And politicians.
I can't disagree with Mr. Bhagat in any case.
Okay. Okay, sir. Mr. Dua, very quickly. So you expect in the present political atmosphere, this kind of a legislative effort to be made to bring these intelligence agencies?
I have certainly of the view that there should be a parliamentary oversight on the functioning of these agencies. There has to be some accountability. But it cannot be widespread. There are 24 parties or 30 parties in parliament. Everybody should have an oversight on that. There should be a small committee between government and the opposition.
I think the bill...
Very small committee. There should be oversight there, but oversight should not indulge in curbing their autonomy also.
Autonomy as far as the operations
which is important from the public when security issues are there. But at the same time, they should not get away. There is nobody is watching their contact. So it has to be balanced between accountability and their autonomous function, which is a very difficult thing to ensure. Now, that is much will depend upon the Prime Minister of the country.
Okay.
Whether agencies are used for a political ruling party or is nation's interest. Okay. That is the main question, underlying main question.
That's right.
Is that.
And in fact, if you look at the lapsed bill, there is a specific provision in that which prohibits the oversight from going into operational areas.
Absolutely. That's what I wanted to say.
So therefore, and that was really the concern when we broadly consulted around before we drafted the bill, that they were very diffident about politicians or political oversight going into operational areas, and which is justified.
Which is justified, and I think on that note we need to end. But it has been a fascinating debate. We have had all the players on this issue right here in the studio, and now also Mr. Dulat. It was quite fascinating, and hopefully let us see how this will all come out in the coming days and weeks if the government is really going to be serious to bring about some kind of a legislation to look into this issue. Thanks to all my guests. Please
So
keep
we should
watching.
ask Mr. Dulat to come out with another volume.
We'll come back with another issue of the picture. Same time tomorrow.